I'm going to cradle her earlobes, lightly put my thumbs in, and just kind of hold. See how I'm doing that? And I'm on my hooks, and just like anything else in creation, in human creation, is breathed by midline, the system will talk to me based upon its relationship with midline. Think of this. Now, a lot of people talk about the cranial bones, the temporal bones, the bone in which the ribs reside, as a modified rib. Now, think of the axes of the ribs. Think about the way that the ribs converge on midline. Think about the way that we treat ribs. We're on 12th ribs now, right? Are we not? One of the jillion times we've done that. And let's say Amy and I, or Walter and I, are sitting at the table, and our first job is to meet each other in the midline. This is what I've done here. My two hands have to meet in midline so that everything that happens is mediated by my relationship to midline. And based upon that, what I feel is my left hand is pulling away from midline, and my right hand is compressing. Compressing along the axis that connects the ear to midline. It's going anteriorly.
So you said you were on the 12th rib?
What?
Did you say you were on the 12th rib?
You're saying hypothetically if you were.
If you were.
Yeah. So I began that conversation, MK, by saying that a lot of people that work with the mechanics of the cranium liken the temporal bones, which are the bones in which the ears reside, as modified ribs. Their behavior is identical to ribs. They have a long axis that converges in midline. So in some ways, we would treat this system here. In fact, the paired axes are kind of a lot like working with the rib cage. Our first job is to engage both contacts to midline so they meet. So that everything I do is from there. So you could think of the place where this converges on midline as like one of those little pearls in the middle of the disc.
So are you treating the ears because we're in SC3, or is it an energetic axis between the
It's an energetic axis in which the temporal bone and the entire system is formed. So the ears will treat around that axis. The temporal bones will reorganize around that axis.
But you're not sitting there really paying attention to the temporal bones or to the...
No. Those are different contexts. There's a totally different set of treatment principles. And
But are you meeting midline straight through, or?
it goes anteriorly.
And, yeah.
I'll pull out the skull in a moment. You'll see. So we're going, and if you just, when you get your hands on it, it'll be obvious because the way in which you contact midline is like that, going forward.
And where are you going into the distortion?
I am going into distortion. I'm shaking hands with distortion.
Yeah.
It's a familiar treatment principle, isn't it?
Yes.
Thank heavens.
Oh, I missed that. You have a line of drive, you're actually pushing in toward midline.
What's that?
You have a line of drive, you're actually pushing in toward midline.
Well, what I'm doing is I'm actually, like we were working with the ribs, right? The axis of from the ears converges on midline, and the temporal bones are considered as modified ribs. So I'm working with the axes, right, that run through the ears, run through, or around which the temporal bones are, and I'm shaking hands with the distortion. So based on, now it's just shifted, but what's happening now is that the left one is converging into midline, and the right one's pulling out. So I'm continuing to shake hands with the distortion while she treats that way.
Can I put my hands on your shoulders?
Sure, yeah. Because this is such a specific contact, I'm going to have you all hop on the table just for a second before we do the lab so you can feel what this feels like. What are we waiting for? Thank goddess.
Lunch.
Right? Well, breath and flow will be enhanced with lunch, right?
There we go. Right side.
Yeah, exactly. What's next?